Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming in hot, and not just because he's a redhead, but coming in hot from the DOJ. Somebody who I just spoke with at the DOJ. Mike and I and Steve Bannon and a great panel were at the DOJ, sort of ripping the bark off of, I guess you could call it the deep state writ large, right? The deep state censorship complex. And you have individuals there, every single person in that photo had been targeted. Some went to prison for standing up against the deep state. Mike Davis with a report from inside of the DOJ, joining us live now. Mike, welcome back. You are fresh out of meetings at the DOJ, and you've made quite a bit of news in my timeline, going out and saying, like, everybody, be patient. It's happening. Can you unpack that for us, please?
Well, first, I want to say, if we go back to that picture and my gut is hanging out, I need to get on that Steve Bannon prison diet. Look at him. He looks fit. Look at him. That guy's like 71 years old, and he's more fit than both of us. So, Ben, if we go to the gulag like Steve did, we can lose like 30 pounds.
That's right. You have the Donald Trump mugshot photo in the back that Donald Trump has now said, I did the mugshot again for my official portrait, which I think is a really good sign, right, about what's to come, because it's like Trump hasn't forgotten, Steve Bannon hasn't forgotten. And you damn well know, Mike, and you said it on the show many times, Kamala wins, you're going to the gulag. We all are. So,
based upon that picture of me, I think I could use a little bit of gulag time. Maybe less red wine and more prison time to get rid of that gut. Holy cow. Anyway, the viceroy needs to get his stuff together.
All right, Viceroy. What did you learn in the DOJ this week?
It was a very productive week. I've gone over to the DOJ and the White House several times during my vice reign here in D.C. And I would say this: there are a lot of people who are concerned about what Pam Bondi is doing or not doing at the DOJ. I think the Epstein stuff got her tripped up. I would just say to your audience, justice is coming. I promise you, justice is coming. I went and met with the Attorney General Pam Bondi one-on-one. I met with her team in the Attorney General's office. I met with Todd Blanche. I met with Amel Bove. Todd Blanche is the Deputy Attorney General. I met with Amel Bove, who is his number two, the number two to the number two, the most powerful unknown position in the government. I met with Chad Mizell, the acting number three, and Pam's chief of staff. I met with Stanley Woodward. I met with Gail Slater. Harmeet Dillon's over there. Kash Patel's over there. Dan Bongino's over there. They're starting to fire on all cylinders. I promise you this. This is normal during a startup phase as you're getting people confirmed and staffed up. You're not going to have immediate results, but they've gotten a lot accomplished already publicly, for example, just firing a lot of the deep state, getting rid of these bad actors, chasing them out of the Southern District of New York, chasing them out of Main Justice. They've closed a lot of these cases. They're opening cases. They're working on this. And I promise you that justice is coming. They're working with the FBI. They're working with these other law enforcement agencies. They're working with these agency heads. They're working with the DOJ leadership. Justice is definitely coming. I know it's coming.
So, we're doing the entire show based on Tulsi Gabbard's referrals for criminal prosecution, criminal leakers from inside the intel agencies. And we've sort of buttressed that with also the referrals for Letitia James for criminal prosecution. Are these criminal prosecutions going to be picked up by the DOJ? Because the system is that they don't have to criminally prosecute these referrals.
Well, I remember, Ben, what day was it? It was like the day after the election. I came on your show and we talked about Big Tish James. And I think we made some headlines. I got in trouble again, which is pretty routine on your show, which I enjoy. It doesn't bother me at all. But I think I told Big Tish that her fat ass may be going to prison. And wow, who knew that we would have been Nostradamus that day? Because now there is pretty compelling evidence that Big Tish, oh, there you go, I dare you. There was pretty compelling evidence that Big Tish James lied on a Virginia mortgage application. She said it was her primary residence, even though she's the New York Attorney General, so she can get a more favorable loan agreement in Virginia. And lo and behold, she was probably lying. And lo and behold, that's mortgage fraud. And lo and behold, there are prosecutors in the Eastern District of Virginia who will probably indict Tish James. I mean, it's pretty compelling evidence. And she's the one, remember, who brought the bogus fraud charge against civil fraud charge against President Trump for supposedly duping Wall Street banks, sophisticated Wall Street banks, paying them on time as agreed in full with interest. And Tish James said that Trump lied about the value of Mar-a-Lago. She said that Trump said Mar-a-Lago was worth, like $500 million, and it's worth double that. But Tish James said, well, no, it's only worth $18 million because that's what the tax assessor says it's worth. If you just go on Zillow, go on Redfin, and look at what property cost in Palm Beach, Florida, the most expensive real estate in the world. Trump has 20 acres of the most prime real estate in the world. It's, I think, the only property that touches both the Atlantic Ocean and the intracoastal waterway. It's clearly worth at least $500 million, if not $1 billion or more. And to say that it's only worth $18 million, a tennis court at Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million. And Big Tish took Trump to trial in New York on this and got Arthur Engeron, that nut job trial attorney, to railroad President Trump, where it was a kangaroo court. There was no due process. Now Democrats want due process for Tren de Aragua terrorists and MS-13 gangbangers who beat women and traffic women and rape kids. But suddenly they care about due process, but they didn't care about due process for President Trump. So I would say to Big Tish, when I warned her several months ago that we're going to put her fat ass in prison, I think that's actually going to come true.
So you believe that the DOJ is going to pick up these charges, and they're going to potentially put Big Tish on a prison diet. You began this by talking about prison diets, and you could potentially get that here. Maybe it would be a good thing. We're not sure, but you're saying that it could happen.
We'll either have to put her on a prison diet, or we're going to have to increase the Federal Bureau of Prisons food budget. So one of the two. But I would say to Big Tish, if you lied on your mortgage application, that's mortgage fraud. You're very familiar with the fraud statutes because you brought your bogus fraud case against Trump to try to derail his presidential campaign and bankrupt him. And I think they have Big Tish dead to rights on this. And so nobody's above the law. And
right.
If they don't indict Big Tish for this, they're giving her amnesty. So I don't think the Trump administration is going to give her amnesty. So I think they're going to indict her.
And what about the intel leakers? This is, again, like, you have to send a message. There has to be some level of deterrence. Otherwise, you're going to get what James O'Keefe uncovered yesterday, which is just straight up traitorism inside of the ranks of the military. This is happening throughout the federal government. What kind of a message do we need to send to these people? And, like, how harsh should it be? Because without the handcuffs and without the perp walks, man, it's just going to be term 1.0.
Yeah, remember they went after President Trump for having his presidential records in the office of former president in Mar-a-Lago, which he's allowed to have under the Presidential Records Act. And they said, oh, we're going to ignore the Presidential Records Act. We're going to charge Trump with espionage for having his presidential records in the office of former president, which is allowed by the Presidential Records Act. What Tulsi Gabbard may have here is she may have people in DNI, the Directorate of National Intelligence, who are leaking classified information, right? That's definitely espionage. So if you're going to charge Trump with espionage, then guess what? These deep state anti-Trump forces, they're going to come after you.
Good. Okay. So I'm not trying to, I know that there's only so much you can say about meetings that were privileged with various agency heads inside of Main Justice, but can you give us just the veins of, when you say justice is coming, can you give us like a broad target area of what's being looked at right now?
I don't want to go into specifics because I don't want to be called as a witness. And so I may or may not have had discussions with any or all of these officials about any or all of these matters. But I just get a hunch as a private citizen who's a very keen political observer that justice is coming. I would say, especially for Big Tish, justice, if I were a betting man, I would bet everything I own that justice is coming for you, sweetheart. So lawyer up. And it's going to be so great. It's going to be so great. The woman who was pursuing Trump for non-fraud was committing mortgage fraud at the same time. So I just cannot wait to sit back and drink my red wine and put more weight on my big gut that we just saw in that picture that Ben put out there with Bannon and May before we missed our prison diet. And I just cannot wait to see Big Tish go through this process, because I am very vindictive, and I believe in I believe that when you commit crimes like Tish James has Tish James has apparently done here, there needs to be justice.
No one is above the law. That's what Big Tish posted just a year ago, Mike.
I would say this, Big Tish: retribution is an important part of justice. It serves as a powerful deterrent, and it serves to heal the victims. And I remember a video in 2022 that I just posted last night. I should have got it to your team, Ben. It was Tish.
We can get it.
Tish going on. She's on Twitter bragging how she's going to go get President Trump in 2020. That's why she's running for AG. She's going to get President Trump. And so life comes at you fast, Big Tish.
The team is grabbing that right now. So, Mike, you often said the hunters are going to become the hunted, and so, you are right. You're the single most correct guest we've ever had on this program. Unpack for us the process that's happening right now inside of the FBI, because I know that there are criticisms about the speed at which things are happening, and we've tried to denote at the beginning of the show that Dan Bongino's been there 1 month. Cash has been there less than 100 days, and that this kind of change doesn't happen overnight.
Well, I mean, they've had a lot of change happen overnight. You have Amy Bove, who was the acting deputy attorney general, who came in on day one, and it was like a political mass murder inside the Justice Department. I mean, Amy Bove, he's a friend, he's an ally. I'll tell you what, if you think the viceroy is vicious, you do not want to get on the wrong side of Amy Bove. He is a total political savage, and I don't know if there's much left for people to do after Amy Bove was there for his 3-week reign of terror. So no, look, there is a ton that's already happened. I mean, they've went through and kneecapped the Southern District of New York, which everyone called before the Sovereign District of New York, that was untouchable by Main Justice. Remember, every federal prosecutor in the country reports to the Deputy Attorney General, who reports to the Attorney General, who reports to the President of the United States. That's how our constitutional order works. That's how you have accountability at the Justice Department to the American people. And before Amy Bove stepped onto the scene on January 20th at 12:01 p.m., the Southern District of New York didn't report to anyone. And I think Amy Bove changed that overnight. Just ask Danielle Sassoon, or whatever the hell her name was, the former acting U.S. attorney in Manhattan, who got chased out of her job. I mean, they've already brought serious reforms to the Justice Department, led by Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche and Amel and Chad and Cash and Dan and Harmeet and Gail and so many others, Stanley Woodward. They are doing a hell of a job every day. Remember, we are up against a deep state rot that's been in place for 60 years at the Justice Department. It went on steroids under Obama. We've had, since Obama took office on January 20th, 2009, we have had every single day has been they've been building this deep state within the Justice Department. And even in Trump's first term, the political leadership over there was too weak to do anything about it. And the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, was their champion for the deep state. So, I mean, they've already accomplished so much at the Trump 47 Justice Department in just 3 short months. And we're just getting warmed up. We're just getting people confirmed to these key jobs. They can't do anything until they're confirmed.
So just a real quick change of arena here. The John Roberts court ruling 7-2 that Donald Trump doesn't have the right under the Alien Enemies Act to get rid of alien enemies. Seems like the court is effectively saying that they are the president. John Roberts saying that he was elected, that the will of 77 million Americans don't matter. And more importantly, that the president has no wartime powers. The president couldn't, and this is something that we posited to Julie Kelly yesterday. Could Donald Trump get rid of the 9/11 hijackers? Like, if the 9/11 hijackers were here and were ready to fly a plane into a building, could Trump get rid of them? Or would there be a district judge saying, no, we should let these guys train, learn how to fly Cessnas?
It would be the latter, and then you'd have Democrat senators having margaritas with them, right? And that is the problem. You have the president of the United States campaigned on the facts. He's going to secure our border. He's going to deport these illegal aliens. All of them are criminals under our federal statutes. He's going to focus first on the most violent and vicious ones like Tren de Aragua, foreign terrorists who are clearly working with the Venezuelan government to sabotage our country. The FBI just made that finding yesterday, right? The president has known about that for a long time. That's why he made the finding under the Alien Enemies Act that these are alien enemies who are working with Venezuela, Tren de Aragua, MS-13. He's focusing on them. There is only due process. There is not constitutional due process rights for illegal aliens. The only time illegal aliens have due process rights is when Congress provides it by statutes. The Alien Enemies Act does not have due process in the statute, so therefore it does not exist. And I need to remind these judges, particularly these justices. I clerked on the Supreme Court. I helped confirm the Chief Justice and Justice Alito and Justice Gorsuch and Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Barrett. I know these people personally. I know Justice Thomas, right? You wear robes, not capes, right? You are a mere mortal. You have a very modest but very crucial role. You decide cases and controversies of the plaintiffs properly before your courts with redressable claims. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. You are judges and robes. You are not superheroes and capes. You are not flying around the country looking for people to save because you're not narcissists. You're merely judges. And what they did on Good Friday is you had 7 judges who thought they were wearing robes instead of capes. They were narcissist superheroes. They actually were self-appointed generals, with Chief Justice John Roberts thinking he's the commanding general, where they think they can open up the Supreme Court and order the president and join the president, maybe for the first time in American history that you have an injunction on a president. You can enjoin officers. You can't enjoin the president. And they enjoined the president and said that he has to stop a military operation to deport illegal foreign terrorists who are working with Venezuela to sabotage our country. That's not constitutional, girls and boys on the Supreme Court, right? So these 7 self-appointed, female, I will add, generals on the Supreme Court think that they can order the president not to carry out a military operation even before the district court has an order, even before the Fifth Circuit issues a ruling, even before the Solicitor General puts in the government's position, submits the government's position, that the government's brief in this case. This is lawless. This is unprecedented. This is extraordinarily dangerous. And the Supreme Court needs to back off of this cliff, just like Justice Alito warned them in this case.
Just a real quick question as a follow-up to that, Mike, because you raised such an important point. Because as so many of us sat here and scratched our heads at how the Clarence Thomas, who decided rightly on this along with Alito, but as how the Clarence Thomas court could go this way. You know a lot of these justices, and you know them personally, and you've worked for many of them. What's going on here with some of the conservative judges and justices? This seems like a very egregious and incredibly strange and rather scary moment in the constitutional powers and how they align. It's not Trump interfering. Trump is not creating the constitutional crisis here. It's the courts who are overtly interfering for the first time, as you mentioned, in American history, in the executive power.
Yeah, I think there's a difference in the generation between Alito and Thomas and the younger justices, the Trump justices. Alito and Thomas went to school at a time where you didn't have the Marxists fully dominating these law schools, right? And then Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Barrett go to law school in a time where the Marxists fully dominate these law schools. And they taught a different type of law when Gorsuch Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett went to law school. They taught that judges are supposed to do justice. They're supposed to be wearing their capes and not robes. They're supposed to be narcissistic superheroes instead of mere mortals who decide cases and controversies. And so I would remind the Trump justices that you wear robes, not capes. Your job is not to fly around looking for people to save. Not every perceived wrong in this world can be righted through the courts. There's not inherent justice and equity that you guys need to go find in every case, right? Sometimes there's just not a good legal result, and that's okay because you're dealing with national security. And if we send foreign terrorists the hell out of our country and they go sit in a Salvadorian prison for the rest of our lives, whether you think that's just or unjust, too bad. You're not the commander in chief.
Oh, the Viceroy. What a barn burner, Mike. That one's gonna fly, man. I'm telling you, like I'm seeing positive results here. We're trying our best to like it's good to ask for results. It's good to hold people's feet to the fire, but you can't don't sabotage, right? There's plenty of that going on, and we wanna establish a clear path for what this entire administration is about and what they are accomplishing. And I think that there's been a lot that's being done behind the scenes, is what we hear. That's going to come out, and it's going to be pretty biblical. And so, thank you, Mike, for doing just that. Everybody follow Mike Davis. He's one of the best out there. He's got 400,000 followers, and he's one of those guys that does very much hold feet to the fire. The Article 3 Project is how he does that. Here's the Article 3 Project right here. Support Mike by supporting the only true upholder of the law on the right, which is the Article 3 Project, an organization that has not been completely cucked by special interests. Godspeed, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you.